Welcome to the December build. We're building in the Cooler Master Cube 540. A big thank you to Cooler Master for sponsoring this video and the giveaway for the system we're building today. By the way, we're going to start out with a little unboxing. I have a care package here that was sent over with a few more components for the build, but also to help demonstrate some of the unique features of the Cube 540.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by the Paul's Hardware store on paulshardware.net, the only official source for Paul's Hardware merchandise. Tantalizing t-shirts, brilliant beer sets, high-quality hoodies, and more, all featuring the classic thumbscrew for tasteful and refined viewers, or the 8-bit thumbscrew for tasteful and refined viewers who hate curves. New designs are added sporadically and at random, so head over to paulshardware.net and get some of that sweet, sweet merch right now. Or not right now, after you watch the video. Either way. The giveaway for this build is open to viewers in the US and Canada. We have another giveaway that's going to be for international viewers. It doesn't involve shipping a large system, so that's going to go up along with our Extra Life charity live stream, and that is taking place on Saturday, December the 6th. I'll be streaming along with Kyle, and we're going to be raising money for Children's Miracle Network hospitals. It's an excellent cause, so I highly recommend you guys join us if you can. And in the meantime, oh goodness. But in the meantime, here are some more components. If you might notice, these are all very Cooler Mastery. All right, our stack of hardware is looking much more complete now. We're building in the Cube 540 case. We have all of these Cooler Master additional components. We have an RTX 5080 Founders Edition graphics card. We've got a 9800X 3D CPU for a really kick-ass gaming PC. We've even got some supplemental 3D printed elements to go along with the Cube 540 case. I think the only thing we're still missing is perhaps the most high-value item in this build. Just a moment, I gotta head down to the vault. Aha! Memory. Seems to be the most challenging part of a computer to get your hands on these days. So I have a nice G.Skill Trident Z5 RGB kit, which has RGB 32 gig DDR5-6400 kit CL32. We'll position that right there, and then let's take a closer look at the rest of the parts. We have a pretty impressive collection here today, so let's just start off with the parts that I already mentioned. Our CPU is the AMD Ryzen 7 9800X 3D, widely agreed upon as the best gaming PC on the market right now, with the possible exception of other AMD 9000 series AM5 CPUs that have X3D built in. And we're pairing that up with a very nice high-end graphics card from NVIDIA. A big thank you to NVIDIA for sending this GPU over, by the way. We appreciate their support for our Extra Life charity live stream and our giveaway for the fans. This is the classic Founders Edition RTX 5080 with 16 gigs of VRAM. Very powerful GPU, second only to the RTX 5090, of course. Rounding out the non-Cooler Master components, we have our motherboard, the Aorus X870E Elite Wi-Fi 7 from Gigabyte. It's got the X870E chipset, so you have maximum connectivity, lots of I/O on this board. Wi-Fi 7 built in, and this sort of rounds out the trifecta as well for our end-of-the-year builds for October, November, and December. We had an MSI motherboard, we had an Asus motherboard, and now we've got Gigabyte, and that will pair up very nicely with our storage, at least our Aorus storage. We've got this 2TB Aorus Gen 4 7300 SSD, which is a Gen 4 drive, which goes up to like 7,000 plus megabytes per second reads and writes. 7,300, I suppose. This one also has a dedicated DRAM cache, so that's a nice feature to have on an SSD if you want maximum performance. Given that SSD prices are also on the upswing though, I wanted to go a little bit beyond the 2 terabytes available there, so we've got a supplemental Patriot P400 Lite, another 2 terabytes of storage, bringing our total up to 4 terabytes. So plenty of room for your Steam library, movies, games, anything else you might want to store on those SSDs. Here's our memory kit, the G.Skill Trident Z5 RGB. Again, DDR5-6400 speed, oh, I said that wrong. So I might have gotten a little lost down in the memory vault, but just to confirm here, I've double checked. This is not a 32 gig kit. We're gonna go ahead and do another 96 gig kit for this build. What the heck? This is a 48 gig by 2 kit. I was trying to look this up online to find what it's currently selling for. The last price I saw that was legitimate was $550 at Micro Center, but that is sold out and I can't really find legitimate listings anywhere else. So this is probably, you know, a $750-ish plus kit by current market standards. Of course, that's not normal. But there you go, plenty of memory for this build, and that I guess ups the overall value as well. Let's look at the Cooler Master components. We're gonna get some peripherals along with the core components for the PC. We've got the MK7 QUBE70, which is one of Cooler Master's high-end keyboards. This is wireless and mechanical. 95% hybrid hot swappable Kale switches. Pretty cool keyboard overall here. We're going to be pairing that with the MM712 matte black mouse. A compact wireless mouse that's also very light, only 58 grams of weight. To power the build, we have the Cooler Master V Platinum 1100 V2, ATX 3.1 and PCIe 5.1 compatible power supply. That means we have the 12V2x6 connector to plug in our RTX 5080. And this is another category of hardware that Cooler Master does an excellent job with. Cooler Master makes really solid power supplies. And then our cooler is the Master Liquid 240 Atmos Stealth. We actually can fit a 360 AIO in this case. I opted for the 240 because it's still plenty to handle our 9800X 3D. And because our case, the QUBE 540, is fairly modular in different ways, you can actually swap like the I/O around to different locations. I wanted to keep it up here at the top, which you can't do if you have a 360 installed across the top, but we'll be taking a closer look at some of those configuration options once we get that out of the box. All right, so those are the parts we're building with today. As always, I am very intrigued to see how this build comes together. I've got my trusty screwdriver, so let's get started. All right, it's time for a closer look at the case we're building in today. This is the Cooler Master QUBE 540, and this is the Moonstone finish, which is whitish, a little bit off-white. Perfect for a December build, because, you know, it's like snow, right? Snow and wintertime, that sort of thing. But this case is extremely modular, and there's actually a bunch of different configurations you can put it in by moving stuff around. So you might notice it's got handles up at the top. I'm a huge fan of cases with handles, but you could actually remove those and reposition them if you want to. So note this long oval cutout, and then you've got the mounting points for the handle on either side of that. That same configuration can be found like right here. It can be found along the sides, and even in 4 locations along the opposite side panel, which is also a contrasting color here. As you can see, this is sort of more of a tannish versus the off-white. Then along the bottom, you've got 4 feet that help it sit up off the desk. But if you wanted to, you could take those feet and you can put them on this side, and then you could have the case sort of horizontally positioned rather than vertically. The same goes for these handles at the top. You can remove them and reattach them in any of those locations where you see that same layout. And in case you're asking yourself, where's the I/O for this case? It's here in the accessories. You also get an actual printed manual. This is becoming more and more of a luxury these days. Speaking of luxurious, this case is also not incredibly high priced. I don't actually have the final price for the US right now. It was selling in the EU for like 65 euro or something like that, but it should be selling for less than $100, actually a decent amount below $100. And if I can confirm the final price from Cooler Master, I will let you guys know. But here in our accessories pack, you have the actual I/O, which has a couple USB Type A's, USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C port, mic and headphone, of course, and power button. But as you can hopefully tell, that oval design matches up with the oval cutout right there, and then it mounts through with the screws attached on either side. Also in the accessories, you get a pack of screws, zip ties, and other essential elements for securing stuff. And then you've got a set of these, just some panels to cover over those oval cutouts if you have some that you want to cover up, theoretically on the side of the case that you're probably going to be viewing the most often. And then there's things like this. This is not 3D printed, but it's just to show you that all of these circular cutouts, which you probably noticed, is a pretty significant aesthetic feature of the case, but they made these to support add-on pieces. So you can pop that on right there, and then maybe you can use that to hang your headset or other accessories for your PC that you might have. This is my wife's headset, by the way. So we'll be trying out some of the other 3D printed accessories that Cooler Master sent us over. We have some that are in sort of a dark gray or black, and we have some that are purple. Oh, and I also forgot to mention the other color, aside from the Moonstone finish, is Stardust Iron, which is more of a dark gray and black aesthetic. All right, so the side panel pops off, just like that. It's got a little fabric tag on one side that you can grab in order to remove it. That is, of course, tempered glass, fragile. Then that gives us access to the interior. So you can see in order to save space but still maintain full-size ATX motherboard compatibility, we have a power supply mount that's currently mounted up here to the front, but you can remove that and reposition it. For example, you can bring it down and position it on the bottom here, which limits your motherboard size to micro ATX, but that gives more support up in the front for, say, dual 360 radiators or additional cooling components, additional fans if you want to add those. Speaking of fans, the case comes pre-installed with a single 120mm fan there at the back, and I'm thinking as we build this out, I might supplement here or there with some others. We're gonna have some more fans installed when we put our AIO in. Removing the opposite side panel cover, we can take a look at the interior there. All of those perforated little holes do have a bit of dust filtration behind them with this mesh that you can see positioned there, and that also has certain cutouts depending on where those little oval spacings are. Twist tied here, we have our power supply cable extension. So if depending where you're positioning the power supply inside the case, run that over and plug that in so you can actually plug in your PSU at the bottom. Delicious silica gel, forbidden. And that gives you a better look at the rear side of the case here, where you can see they do have cutouts here for rear connector motherboards. We maintain compatibility with that. Various cable tie-down points, as well as some channeling areas so you can route your cabling where it needs to go. Of course, with our power supply mounted up here, we're going to be channeling a lot of the cables down and through this way. And we'll be tying those off and positioning them where we can to see if we can get some decent cable management and a clean finish build. And now I've just removed 4 screws from the bottom of the case so I can pull off this tray like that. So this is going to allow you to mount fans or radiators to the case, and this also has a dust filter position just below it. I actually kind of like it when I have to like reality check myself to be like, wait, how is this supposed to work? This case has some unique ways in which they've designed things. So the bottom mount here for the radiator fits right there, and then this is a removable dust filter that you can slide underneath it, and then it's got magnets that will hold it in place, as you can see down there across the bottom. I was thinking to myself, do they mean you to take this out and like reposition it on the outside of the case? That doesn't seem to be what they want you to do. For instance, the top one here, if you push down from the outside, that'll allow you to grab the mesh and pull it out like that. Also, you might notice, again, these cutouts in some of the mesh. That's going to cover up those external oval gaps, but it also gives you the option to probably remove that if that's where you wanted the I/O to go. So removing the 4 screws from the top allows me to pull this upper cage out. And this one is almost the same, but as you can see, they've added some extensions onto the ends. Those are also held on by a couple screws, so you can undo those to pop off these extensions depending on whether you're going with something like a full-size 360mm AIO, or if you're shortening it down to a 240 or 280. Removing 2 more Phillips head screws here so that I can loosen up the power supply mount. That's held on by these, which stick into some grooves at the back, so there's a few different height locations you can move that to, so you can have it positioned up high if you don't need access to that front I/O, or you can move it down a little bit lower to give yourself a little bit more clearance above the power supply. And if you want to position the power supply cage in the bottom, it just fits in right there, and those same 2 mounting screws feed in through the back right there, so that would position it. So it would end up being right there, and again, that would limit your motherboard size to micro ATX. One last thing to point out at the back here is that your rear I/O can be reconfigured for vertical GPU mounting. You do need a sold separately riser cable from your motherboard to do that. To access those, you remove this panel, which is pretty much just a cover for the screws for those PCI Express expansion brackets. And then one of the PCIe brackets up here actually has screw holes across the top, and then there's notches down here along the bottom as well. So that would allow you to just rotate them. To position them this way instead, so depending on where your GPU is mounted, you cover up the ones that are closer or further away from the motherboard. So that's pretty cool too. I guess the last thing to show would be that there is a mesh, so a little bit of dust filtration for the front of the case as well. That is also held on by magnets, so you can remove it like so. That would become a little bit more difficult to remove with the power supply installed there. So I would say if you're using this case full time and you've got front intake fans, you probably just want to vacuum off the front of the case and then maybe occasionally do a slight disassembly so you can access that front mesh as well. But all right, I think I've pretty much disassembled this case and taken a look at it from all different angles. So now let's get our motherboard set up so we can start installing the hardware. made a good amount of progress with the build so far. Got the motherboard installed, got the front I/O panel positioned up at the front, and routed some of those cables back to plug them in. Power supply installation is underway right now, but I just realized we have a 90-degree angled connector here at the end of our 12V2x6 connector for our V1100 Platinum V2 power supply, which is very convenient if you have a GPU that's maybe right up against the side panel of your case and you need extra clearance and you don't want to like bend the connector if you're plugging in directly. However, NVIDIA, in its shame probably, and attempting to hide the 12V2x6 connector as much as possible, kind of has it tucked in a little bit in the Founders Edition version of the RTX 5080, and the same goes for the 5090 and 5070 for that matter. And unfortunately, this will not fit in there. It would actually need to go that way, so you can see it's angled the wrong direction. The other end will fit pretty snugly right in there, so we're just reversing that. I'm going to plug the 90-degree angled side into the power supply. I'm actually liking how this build is turning out. It looks, I don't know, it looks somewhat industrial to me for some reason, but we got the AIO installed. It's been a while since I installed a Cooler Master AIO. I'm gonna give credit to this one for using the actual AMD mounting bracket with the 4 mounting points on either side rather than using the little clips that go around those 2 little plastic things, because I much prefer mounting directly to that bracket at the back. This AIO also has some interesting accessories, like it's got this little clip here. That's for tube control, so you know, if your tubes are dangling in a way that you find unappealing or something, you can sort of put that on there and position it between those. It comes with 2 of those, so you may or may not leave those on for the finished build. The cold plate on the AIO also had a Cooler Master like overlay with it, with sort of a hexagonal grid. So you actually put the thermal paste in that, and then you smooth it across it and then peel it off, and it gives you the nice finished grid of thermal paste there. So I'm not sure whether or not that improves things or whether it just makes the installation of the build look aesthetically more appealing. But I went ahead and used that method nonetheless. But to round things out, for cooling, I've added a couple 140mm fans down at the bottom. These are Be Quiet Lightwings fans because I did not have any Cooler Master 140s on hand to use. So these do have some RGB lighting that's going to give us a little bit of underglow, and it should shine through on the top a little bit as well. But finally, we've got our 12V2x6 power cable right over here. So we're going to go ahead and install our graphics card, and then hopefully the system will power on. Now we have the traditional moment of truth. I've already switched on the power supply switch on our PSU since we're using a little extension cable. So I'm going to push the power button now. We have an initial glorious spinning up of fans, lights coming on. It looks like we're probably doing a little memory training step since this is an AM5 motherboard. I'm now going to go through some configuration and setup steps, and I will return in just a moment to share with you the final system and maybe some performance numbers and that kind of thing, but I did want to show you my cable management while I'm here. There's not a huge amount of space back behind the motherboard tray here, but there was enough for me to get everything tucked away. Now we will check that the side panel reattaches successfully as well. Awesome. All right, guys, I am back, and while I've come down with a little bit of a cold in the interim, this build, I'm a little biased here, but I think this is a cool little build. I'm actually really digging the kind of beige aesthetic. I feel like that's a bit of a throwback, but still sort of a modern look for the overall system. But let me walk you through some of the setup steps that I did. First of all, you might have noticed when I first powered the system on, the two AIO fans were not spinning, and that's just because I totally forgot to plug them in. So I fished the cable out for that, plugged it into the CPU fan header, that's good to go. So from there I went to the Gigabyte website, downloaded the latest BIOS or UEFI for this motherboard. We do have version 1.2, there's an older version 1.0 and 1.1, so I made sure to get the right version. Then after getting the BIOS updated and Windows 11 installed, I went ahead and enabled the XMP profile for our memory kit, and then installed the basic drivers, chipset for the motherboard, graphics card, latest driver from NVIDIA. I just did a quick 3D Mark Times by Extreme test on the system again, just to do some validation, some temperature testing. Our overall score for 3D Mark Times by Extreme was 13,550, CPU score was 7,324, GPU score was 15,942. That's right about where it should be in terms of the 3D Mark scores for the hardware we have installed, the 9800X3D and the RTX 5080. But if you compare this to the October build, which had pretty much the same core hardware with a 9800X3D and an RTX 5080, that system scored a little bit better on the graphics score because we had a manufacturer overclocked graphics card, whereas this system scored a little bit higher on the CPU score, but both were just within a few percentage points of each other. Our all-in-one liquid cooler did a fine job though. The Atmos 240 Stealth, the CPU temperature during the CPU test only got up to 75.8 degrees Celsius max. The die and CCD temperatures were in the low 70s and high 60s, so perfectly fine there. And our GPU temperature got up to 63.2 max and 68 degrees on the memory. The Founders Edition graphics card is an excellent cooler, and it's awesome that it's also just a 2-slot cooler, although we could have fit a bigger card in this case if we wanted to. From there, I went ahead and got the RGB lighting set up. We actually have 4 light-up elements in this case. Our graphics card, which is just a static white. Then we have our RGB fans down at the bottom, the G.Skill memory, which lights up, and then a little bit of edge lighting on the motherboard that's actually pretty hard to see, but it is there. On the plus side, this means we can control all those RGB elements with a single piece of software. On the minus side, that software is the Gigabyte Control Center, which in my opinion is just way too much for what you actually need it to do. But on the plus side, when I installed the Gigabyte Control Center software this time around, it did not automatically try to install Norton Antivirus when I did an update, so I guess that's an improvement. Also on the plus side, it was able to recognize and control the RGB LEDs from the G.Skill memory right off the bat, but when you have everything synchronized, there's actually a fairly limited number of RGB settings that you can enable, and I find that just static single color is the best if you want something that looks nice, because the flashing and the RGB vomit mode, they just don't appeal to me anymore. The eventual winner of this system, of course, could try something like OpenRGB or Signal RGB to get something a little bit more flashy, but for my needs, I actually found that this color scheme with sort of a orangish setting that I found, which kind of gives the LEDs a beige light, which matches with the case, I think was the most aesthetically pleasing of the options that I chose. I also tried out sort of a Cooler Master purple, which looked pretty nice. And then of course you could just go all white, which matches a little bit better with the white LEDs on the graphics card. Of course, I couldn't go without some hands-on testing of the 3D printed elements that Cooler Master sent over. There's the bracket that comes in the box with the case, which is sufficient if you just need something like a headphone holder. But with how many circular cutouts there are throughout the case, it's just cool to think about the possibilities of where you might be able to snap on these little devices. And these little slot mount pieces that we're using to slide on like a drink holder or a bit more of a purpose-built headphone stand just makes you think like, what are the other possibilities of things that you could make that could slot into that would actually be useful for a case that you ideally have sitting on a desk so you can actually access those 3D printed elements. I think the headphone holder is probably the most practical of those, and that's my wife's headset, by the way. It's not part of the giveaway. These are the Cooler Master CH351s. She wanted the pink and blue version. That actually matches very nice with her current setup, but then the drink holder, if you need a frosty beverage, you can have it right there. And if you're not a drinker, if you don't want to have like a liquid open container right next to or on your computer case, I found that popping like the mouse in there is also a pretty practical thing. And with the case having the handles, I think they kind of made it so you could sort of attach your keyboard and everything, grab the whole thing and take it with you if you're at a LAN party or something like that. Speaking of peripherals, the MM712 mouse and MK770 keyboard are also very nice, so thank you Cooler Master for including these for the giveaway. The keyboard in particular just has a really nice heft to it, and these keys. The keys have a very pleasing sound. and feel to them as well. And one of the things I really like about the Cooler Master keyboards that they've been doing for quite some time, although it has a bit of a learning curve, you can actually control all their RGB lighting directly on the keyboard without having to have software installed, so that's pretty cool too. But that is all the time I have for this video and this build on the Cooler Master QUBE 540. If you're in the US or Canada, definitely check the link in the description and enter to win this system. The giveaway is going to be up for about 2 weeks, and of course all of the build giveaways I've done recently have been helping to support our Extra Life charity live stream, which is taking place on Saturday, December 6th. We're going to start at about 10 a.m. We'll be streaming from right here in my workspace, garage, whatever you want to call it. We're raising money through Extra Life for the Children's Miracle Network hospitals. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. A big thank you to Cooler Master for providing most of the parts for this build. A big thank you to NVIDIA for providing the graphics card. And a final thank you to AMD for providing the 9800X 3D CPU. And a big thank you to you guys for watching this video. If you want to hit the thumbs up button on your way out, that's greatly appreciated. And don't forget to check out my store at paulshardware.net, where we have our end of the year sale going on. It's a great time of year to pick up some high quality Paul's Hardware merchandise. Thank you guys once again, and we'll see you all in the next video.